alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Hello and welcome to Alive at Your Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, author of several books and more to come. And with me today is returning guest, Terry Shepard. Welcome back to the podcast, Terry.
It is so great to be back. It's so soon. You know, you get a first, Tim. I mean, you're the first guy that I've talked to about the new book. So I'm very excited that it's you.
Well, I'm glad it's me too. I mean, honestly, this is perfect timing, and it's always good to talk to you, obviously. I mean, always, but the last time was awesome, as I'm glad to have you back. And so you've written a bunch of different kinds of stuff, but the new book's a thriller, correct? One of your Jessica Ramirez books. Yeah.
It's the second of the Jessica Ramirez series. Chasing the Captain links Jess up with her London counterpart, a detective inspector named Leanna Evans, and they're searching for the mastermind behind Vega, the bad girl in Jess's first outing. Somehow Jess has built this huge fan base in the UK cops, and they asked me if I could bring her to their neighborhood, and it turned out to be an ideal setting for a thriller and gave me a chance to introduce a whole new ensemble cast and learn a ton about London cops, MI6, and one of my all-time favorite cities. I just love London.
Oh, I've never been. I wish I could say I'd been there, but you know, it's a long way from Minnesota. Not actually that far. Get to Chicago, it's no big deal. But anyway, right.
All you gotta do is get to O'Hare, and you're there.
I think there's still direct flights from Minneapolis, even. But whatever. That's right in my neck of the woods. Anyway. What am I talking about? So, so these books that, you know, thrillers, kind of like, detective thrillers, right? Yeah. I mean, just to remind people. Yeah, that's the genre that I have the most fun with, Tim, is detective thrillers. Fun's good.
I had some luck with the kids book. I mean, my kids had the questions about COVID-19, and that's where Juliet and the Mystery Bug originated. It was there, and that was actually a very good book for me this summer. It's been in a ton of doctors' offices, and right now we're actually trying to pitch it to Pfizer or Moderna to see if they'll pick it up and buy a couple 100,000 copies. But I could actually be a best-selling author. That would be great.
That'd be pretty sweet. Not to mention probably helpful. You know, you could get helpful for other people too, not just you. Get the book out there.
That's the main thing. You know, I mean, that's the reason we wrote it, is to help kids understand the hygiene skills they need to stay safe in the pandemic. And then the last section, which is in the complete series that we're selling now, actually goes to the science of vaccines from a child's perspective. And I don't think there are any other books out there that do that. So it feels like we're in a unique space. So with that going on and all the excitement about Captain, it's been quite a week.
Holy cow. Yeah. You really, I mean, it seemed like you were blown up last time, but it's going even more. Great. You know, awesome.
Yeah. It's been a very good year for us. I mean, the best part is that we've stayed healthy, and I was lucky enough. I think we talked last time that I was in the Moderna trial last year, so I've been, I've had the boosters and all that kind of stuff, and they're watching over me very closely. And my wife has a compromised immune system, so she gets all the good stuff as early as it's offered as well. So from that perspective, it's been great. And then, the best thing about being a writer is the community. I mean, I get to meet cool guys like you, hang out, talk shop, and I find out that we have all these other things in common too, beyond just the writing. And so that's really been the best part for me, Tim. It's just getting to know everybody and making all these new friends that I never realized I had.
Yeah, it's a small world, but it's also large enough. There's always more people to meet. Even in the little community like the writing community.
I mean, that's really true. I mean, and even from a competition standpoint, there's so much demand out there for books that if you're writing stuff that's good, it'll find an audience eventually, and there's room for everybody. So it doesn't feel at all like it did when I was a corporate guy, when it was cutthroat competition everywhere and all kinds of pressure. Now my biggest challenge is just keeping the content coming, because people want more. They like it. They want more. And, you just can't, as you well know, you can't write that stuff overnight. It takes a while to put those things together.
Some people try, and I'm one of those people. Not overnight, though. I'm not a nighttime guy. more of a morning writer. But it's like I do write. I'm actually looking at writing a little faster even than I've been doing, pumping it up a bit, because I feel like this is maybe my complex here, but I feel like I'm always the slowest. I'm always at my slowest pace. I'm always just inching along. I feel like I'm terribly slow, which is funny. So when you say something about, oh yeah, you're so productive, like you were saying on Facebook, it's like, this is. It's always surprises me when people think I'm a fast writer. I'm not that fast right now, but I will be soon.
And it may feel that way. I really wish I could write with the speed that Asimov wrote. I mean, because that guy, he was turning out stuff in every section of the Dewey Decimal System. He has some book, and something was always going on. I know he did some collabs, but he was just able to. Once he got going on a series like Foundation or any of the robot stuff, he could turn out 4 or 5 of them in the space of like maybe a year and a half. I mean, it was just incredible how it felt like it, at least to me, because there was always something new. I was always buying,
No, that's kind of my dream, honestly, to be more along those lines. Or like Michael Moorcock. He didn't write as many books. I don't think it's Asimov. Right. But I did recently, actually, on this trip, I actually read his first Elric of Melnibone book. And that was really fun. I mean, it's not actually the first one. Sorry, it's the prequel. It's the first prequel. The first chronologically, but it's actually the 4th book. Mm-hmm. It's a long story. It's a Star Wars type situation, I guess. Or
have you had him on the show? Is he going to guest for you yet?
No. I don't think he'd ever be interested in that. He's I don't know how old he is, but he's been around a while,
Yeah, you should reach out to see. You never know.
I guess.
I mean, that would be how cool would that be, man, to have an hour with him.
That'd be amazing. Half an hour, yeah. It's just,
make you say no.
Yeah, geez, wow. That's maybe I'm thinking that'd be too big for my britches, but hey, it'd be worth a shot, right? The worst you can say is no, and that's not.
Yeah, I mean that's you never know until you ask. I mean that's I think I told you when I started this thing, I just picked my 4 favorite writers and wrote to them, and I didn't even expect to hear from one of them, but I heard from all 4 of them, and 3 of them are pretty much friends now. So it's fun. And he's normal. He's just like, he's as abnormal as we are, I guess.
I'm sure. But it was a very enlightening experience to finally read a book by him. Actually, I've not actually read any of his fiction before. I'd read a book of interviews that he did, that he was interviewed by another author for. So very much like this, but just in print, and with less laughter, I think, because they don't transcribe that stuff. But anyway, and that was
how do they do that? You gotta edit that.
Yeah, I guess. But anyway, point is, I was very shocked by how, because this is a book he wrote in 4 days. That he did this essay about writing a novel in 4 days, and not an essay. Sorry, that was one of the interviews. The first interview in this book of interviews with him. He talks about how he would write an Elric book in 4 days each time, 15,000 words a day. And have a 200-page book at the end of the week, basically. And it's pretty crazy, yeah. But
that's productivity. That's amazing.
He didn't even have and this is the 60s and 70s, so he doesn't have a word processor. He's typing all this on a typewriter. Come on.
Yeah, and you wonder what happens when he has a mistake or when he has a strike or something. Does he just keep going through it and then fix it later, or does he break out, Michael Nesmith's mom's whiteout? And
I'm feeling he doesn't have much time for whiteout. He didn't anyway.
Yeah, 15,000 words. That's in a 10-hour day. My gosh, I mean what is that? That's 1,500 words an hour.
Yeah,
without a break. I don't know how you do that.
I know how I could do it. I type pretty fast, and then speed isn't everything, but it is a perennial topic for me. Because I'm always trying to get more done, and I do. And actually, since I stopped dictating, I went up to about 2,000 or 2,500 words an hour is my kind of average typing rate when I'm composing a story. Yeah. And when I would dictate, it'd be like 6,000, but it'd be really messy and it'd be very hard to clean up, which resulted in.
So, but how does that work? Does your mind already know the story?
No, I discover the story.
Yeah.
I don't need to know it. It's weird. But one of the things that hit me here, having read, is that it's a formula thing. I just understand the formula. I've read a fair number of books. I've written enough books and I know this is an interview with you, but I'm talking now, so I'm just going to finish what I'm saying before we turn it back toward you, because I mean, people on this show, they know I talk a lot, whatever. So the thing is, to write 2,400 is probably more like my normal work rate when I'm going fast. If I write like 2,400 words an hour, it's because I don't know the story. I'm a discovery writer. I don't plan anything, and that's actually better for me than knowing what's going to happen next in written form. Like if I type up notes, that actually slows me down immensely. Right. Yeah, if I type up notes in advance, I'm like, this scene has to be this. No, it's more just a freedom of possibility that the scene can be it can be anything it needs to be. And then that just chain those together, and boom, you have yourself a book. My best day ever was only 15,000 words though, and I've never done many more than that. And I only did that once. I only done that once. So it's hard for me to sustain that rate. Let me put it that way.
I'm not sure I could sustain that level of creativity. I do the same thing you do. I'm a pantser, and it goes where the characters want it to go. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I'll get to the end of a story and I put Jess in such a corner. That's what happened to me in the second act. I mean, that's why it took so long for this book to come out, was that I got stuck. I mean, I didn't have writer's block. I knew how I wanted it to end, but I didn't know how to get her from London to Moscow, where she was going to go into this single combat with a bad guy. And that took me a while to figure out those steps to make it. And I hear this a lot, from other writers and from some of my mentors, is you get stuck in that second act kind of doldrums, and that's where the magic can really happen. And once I finally got unstuck and the words started flowing again, the story just rolled. But I can't, I got to kind of think at the end of the chapter, okay, I put Jess in this position. How do I get her out? And then what other fuses have I lit earlier in the story that I need to keep burning? I mean, you obviously have multiple plot lines going at the same time, and you got to develop them all. And part of my style is that there's rarely two scenes that take place in the same location. Mm-hmm. So we're jumping in this story. We jump from Nashville to Illinois to London, back to Nashville, back to London, then to Moscow, then to DC, and it's going all over the place. And I got to remember what's happening where and which cast of characters are doing what and that kind of stuff. So occasionally I need to go back and make sure I have it time for God's. So that's what happened in this thing, is that I had the prologue that I wrote. I spent a lot of time writing the first page of the thing. And I forgot to tie it to the story. So one of my beta readers was saying to me, wait a minute, you got this guy dying in an alley. He presses send on his cell phone. Where did the message go? And I went, dang, I forgot. It's supposed to go to the associate director of the FBI. So that was like, a paragraph that I had to put it in the right place. But I'd forgotten about it all the way through the first draft.
Oh, yeah. This is like, for want of a nail, right? The kingdom could be lost. You missed that paragraph.
I think that happens a lot. We get going on something that we really like, and then it's easy to forget. In fact, it'd been so long since I read Captain, and when I finally last night, I got the prototype book here, mm-hmm. and I read it from cover to cover because I had forgotten how much fun it was to write the story.
No, that's the best. Isn't that a great feeling?
It was
That's amazing. That's like you say that the people are great, but that's the dream too. When from writing a book, it's like you write a book that you actually want to read again after all the editing and everything. That rocks.
Yeah. Part of it was Mickey. He was saying, "All right, we're gonna do this right this time. We're gonna make sure we have enough of a runway so we can actually promote this book." My publicist, Creative Edge, and so I did that. So, and I was working on other stuff. Once I have 3 other Jess plots that I have in various stages of completion right now. I'm trying to decide which one to work on. One of them is actually a collab with another author where she gave me her world and I put Jess into it. One of the big things that I get a lot of mail about is Jess going to actually, fall in love and accept this FBI guy's marriage proposal. She's got an FBI dude that's after her, and she keeps putting him off. And they're saying, well, what's going to happen? So I was thinking, okay, how can I deal with that? So I thought, okay, what we'll do is we'll put them in a strange city together. They'll decide they're going to try and live together and see how it would work. So she's going to go and work for this gal that's on maternity leave, who is the protagonist for my other author friend. And so she's in that world doing her thing. And Michael, her boyfriend, transfers from DC to the Boston FBI office, and he's working on a case in her town and stuff. So I was rolling down that thing. And once you get into those, I know this happens to you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You get into another story and you forget totally about the one that you wrote. So book comes, I pull it out and I go, oh yeah, I forgot about that proving ground scene at the beginning, where there's a Tesla going 170 miles an hour and the captain takes over controls and blows it up. I mean, that was great.
Yeah.
I just keep passing on the screen, that kind of orange mushroom cloud and all that. And I'd forgotten I'd written all that.
No, see, that's so great. Actually, that's like the book that I just released back in July. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was like a couple weeks ago now, maybe half a month. Temple Theater Book 1, The Forgotten Mask. Because I started writing that book 7 years ago, and then I only finished it this year. There was so much of that book when I was editing it that I totally forgot this, but it's actually working really well. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you keep track of that stuff.
You don't. I mean, I don't. I guess maybe I have a pretty good memory for that kind of thing. No memory for anything else, but just for that stuff. Because I don't really worry about it that much. I just it's not even like I had to reread the whole book, because this is a pretty old book. I had to reread the book before I could finish it, before I could write the last 10,000 words. It turned out it wasn't that much more, but yeah, it was a really sticky situation at times. But the thing is, I really enjoyed the story even before that, and the story was pretty robust, even before I went back to it. Which was really surprising to me. I was like, because a lot of my stories, I go back to the older stories, and I'm like, this is kind of gross. I don't like this very much. So a story that's been sitting on my shelf for 7 years is kind of, and then I'm like, wow, this is good. I'm enjoying this. Really surprising.
That's a great discovery, isn't it? When you find something like that comes back, it's like finding a favorite toy from your youth, and you bring it back out and you say, wow. I mean, I was a big slot car guy when I was a kid, and I had a slot car set in the basement, and I knew everything about how to take apart DC motors and all that kind of stuff. So even now, when one of my friends will send me an old Strombecker ad from 1969 or something like that, I'm immediately back in that world. I just go back there, and I wish that they still had them around.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've put this on display elsewhere, but I'm a huge war game nerd. Like Warhammer 40,000, that kind of thing. And I love just cutting up models, putting them together ways that weren't intended, that kind of thing. And I've been doing that since I was 12 or younger even. Forget. I mean, not the cutting part. That's kind of dangerous. You don't do that until you're a little older. You need knives for that, But, yeah, anyways, it's good stuff. I mean, but those familiar elements, when they come back, and it works with stories. It works with a lot of hobbies, too. And I mean, granted, for a lot of people, story is their hobby, and that's great. But it's really rewarding to go back to something. I'm like, wow, I'm surprised how much I like this, or I forgot how much fun this was. That's a great feeling in its own right. And
you get it's fodder for ideas for you for the stuff you write. I mean, a lot of the things that will come to me as a lot of times, my novels will begin as a short story. Like with this one, I actually wrote a short story of Jessica witnessing an execution, which is part of the opening act of Chasing the Captain. Only I wrote it as a Twilight Zone story, so she was there witnessing it, but we go into the guy's mind as he's about to be electrocuted, and he has one of those. I don't know if you remember. Did you ever see the Twilight Zone episode Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge?
Yes,
do you remember that one?
I did. I've seen it more than once, actually. It's a good episode.
Yeah. Well, that's what this was. It was one of those things where, in the moment before they turn on the juice, all of a sudden there's this big thunderclap, and a huge storm destroys the wall of the prison. He's able to get out. He finds a car that somebody's left on the road because people are running away from the storm. He goes to the house where he thinks his wife is cheating on him. She is. She's there with another guy. He pulls down his sword from his Marines and slices him to pieces. And he sits back in the rocking chair and says, well, I wasn't a murderer before, but I am now. And at least people will understand why, because I wasn't lying. She was cheating on me. And then, bang! You hear the clap of the 18,000 volts going through his body, and it's like that neck snap in Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. And then when we swing back to Jessica's point of view, and she's sitting there all angry because her boss, the chief, is making her witness this as another way to try and break her so that she'll quit the force if she has to watch somebody die like this. But when it became Chasing the Captain, I took out all of Vincent's part of that. And I just had, instead what I did was I did a flashback and had Vincent be the first guy that she ever arrested. When the first day she was on her own, she finds his stolen car and she chases him down. And when she finally gets him after a really cool car chase, she comes up to him and he says, "My name's Vincent Colpado. I'm wanted in Nashville for murder. I didn't kill my wife." And she just says, "Hey, nobody was hurt. It was really cool. I got to do a pit maneuver for the first time. Thank you for a very exciting first day at the office," And then you go back from that flashback to her walking behind him, from the cells to the death chamber. And, the warden's people talking to him about, why is she here? And her chief must really hate her if he's doing this. And then she's got to watch all that. And the thing is that as she does her research, she figures out that there really is no conclusive evidence that the woman ever died. He pushed her off the bridge. They know that in the Cumberland River, but nobody ever found her body. And part of what Jessica gets is one of the reporters who covered it gave her his Dropbox with all his research in it. And there's an odd phone number in there in London. And she calls it, and it turns out to be this detective inspector who had called the reporter and said, "Hey, when this thing first went down, I could swear that I saw that gal getting on the tube at the Strand. I think that girl was alive," and nobody did anything about it. And so Jess decides there's other things that happen that make her have to get out of the country. So she goes to London and meets up with this gal. And then the fun begins, because now she's starting to get close to the truth. And not only do the bad guys want her out of the way, but the good guys do, because there's an international kind of game plan that she doesn't know anything about, that they're all trying to, figure out. And that was the fun for me, that all those puzzle pieces just falling together in the right place. And, then there's the subtext. This is what you're good. That's what I love reading your books, because there's this subtext of character development where she still has not come to terms with her father's death. And this guy that she's after ordered his assassination. So she's thinking, what will revenge feel like? And she already knows from Chasing Vega that it doesn't feel good, because she ends up killing Vega in the Colorado River at the end of book 1. And it's very empty for her. She realizes that her enemy is really not this killer. Her enemy are the rapids, because it's the middle of the night and she's in basically whitewater, swimming. And and there's the whole feeling. God, I'm trying to remember the book of yours that I read that had that where kind of like the universe is taking over, and you realize how helpless you are, and all you can do is really ride it out and do your best to make it through. And that was the lesson she learned in Vega, but she still has never forgiven herself for her father's death. And so that's what Captain is all about from her standpoint, is that she's trying to come to terms with the fact that she let down the most important man in her life. And it's, fun to watch that happen in the middle of all of this gunfire and car chases and helicopter things and stuff. It's I think it'd make a great movie.
It sounds incredible. It does sound like a great movie. But but there's something about books that movies aren't even going to match. It's like the river, for example. There's that you just described, that scene. Sounds just like, oh man.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that being as good in a movie as it would be in a book. Because you're in the character's head in the book and you're just fighting with it. Yeah. Maybe I'm not a movie guy either, but I just love books more.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Tim. I mean, when the scenery becomes a character, that is really cool. And the Colorado River, the rapids, were a character in Vega, and London is a character in Chasing the Captain. I mean, it plays the whole geography, the history and stuff plays a part in the story. That's very powerful. And you have, Jessica is this fish out of water again. People are saying to me, when are you going to write a story where she's actually working in her hometown? You're sending her to Arizona and London and Asia and stuff. When are we going to see her just do some boring stuff at home?
That's not what books are about, guys.
Well,
they could be, but not the boring stuff, Could be about.
Yeah, I mean, I did that at Christmas. I wrote a short story at Christmas because people were looking for another Jessica story. So I wrote Chasing Cody for Christmas time, which was about a kid with Down syndrome that witnesses a bank robbery, and everybody just doesn't ask him any questions because they figure, what would he know? But it turns out that he's got the observation powers of Sherlock Holmes, and he's friends with Jess and Allie. And, they, after everybody's done, he witnessed the whole thing. After everybody's done interviewing everybody and they let him go, they take him out to dinner, and he basically starts drawing out the whole scene in detail. And the fun part of that story is watching Jessica figure out how much he's seen, because the key is asking the right questions, right? When you're dealing with somebody that's socially challenged, you pick the right questions for somebody that gets in their space. And it's like what you were talking about, the games that you played. We could go down that rabbit hole for 90 minutes, you and me, and not anything else, and we'd be like totally happy. But you got to know the right questions to ask. And in Chasing Cody, she finally figures out, because she's upstairs at the grocery store where he works, and he's pointing out all these people, and he's saying, Mrs. So-and-so's obviously having a party at her classroom before the holidays because she's buying 5 gallons of vanilla, and then and it looks like so-and-so's just lost a front tooth, and I think somebody's she had a facelift and all this stuff. He's just pointing this out, and so then she starts asking him about, what do you remember about the 2 guys that held at the bank? And he knows everything. But no, this is the thing that always drives me nuts about people that are perceived to be disabled.
Yeah,
is that we just discount the value that they have. So I love plugging those people in. The guy that runs MI6 and Chasing the Captain does it from a wheelchair. He's got MS, or muscular dystrophy. And he got it late in life. He was a great agent. They decided they didn't want to lose his brains, so they put him in a chair. And he ended up, originally, he was a nod to one of my friends. I always put my friends in the stories. He's a guy that I really like a lot, who's an amazing guy, lives in Michigan. And he only had one scene. But as it turned out, his character was so fascinating that he becomes, he's one of if this does go on the screen, he's going to be a big co-star, because he's got probably a ton of screen time in there. But I love
it when they grow.
When you can plug those people in. The best thing for me in terms of feedback, Tim, is when I get an email from somebody that says, I'm a young Latina and I want to grow up to be a cop because Jessica is. Or like we talked about last time, I'd still get tons of mail about Joey Price, my medical examiner on the autism spectrum. I mean, they love him. And, I ran into a guy who told me, I never thought that I could do this, but I realized that I have the mental capacity to do everything Joey does. I just have to learn how to translate, for me it's the communication thing that's a challenge. And Joey learned how to work around it. And we all do, right? We all come with this toolbox to life.
Yeah,
and we got
to. Seriously, I learned to write characters. I never thought I'd be able to do that. Once I realized how far I was from it when I started out writing as a teenager, I thought I'd never. By the time I turned, I think probably 18, maybe I was like, I'd written like 3 books, and I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to write a good character because all my books were bad at that point. And I don't think, I don't want to say which ones I did that I wrote that the characters really come through in, because I don't know. I mean, it depends on the audience. But I feel like I do that now. I get a lot of good feedback on that kind of thing now. And it's surprising to me because I don't know when exactly I hit the nail on the head, but I'm autistic. I had a hard time learning. I take forever to get to know people. It's forever.
Yeah, right.
We talked about that last time probably. And it's amazing. And it's the same way with characters. So it's like, if I can write a character and you like them in the first scene, that's like the biggest win for me that I can get, as far as that's the highest challenge that I'm ever going to have as a writer, almost writing novels.
Well, I think what you did was you kept putting more weight on the weight machine. I mean, this, strength, we don't get strong without resistance, and you have to have increasing load of resistance. And you just kept going back and back and back. And what happens is, no matter what the toolkit is you come with,
Yeah.
Eventually, if you focus on something long enough, you figure it out. It's like finding that last puzzle piece in the 3,000 piece puzzle.
Then suddenly it's done. It's complete. Yeah.
Yeah. But all of a sudden, do you remember the moment that it kicked in for you? Was there a moment, or did it just kind of happen?
No, there wasn't. I mean, I only remember mostly because I didn't have that much feedback for a long time. Because I stopped doing writing groups a few years ago. Before, about the time I started publishing, I stopped doing writing groups. And then I had still a few rough books out there. Let me be fair. The first couple books were pretty bad. Not bad, but like they were a little rushed, and I'm gonna have to republish them once I flesh them out a little bit. But but then, so around 2016 is probably when I really think I figured it out. That's 2015, 2016. That's when I wrote Origin of Storms, the big Pillar Universe book. I'm not sure if that's the one you read. It's a huge book. You'd remember if it was that one. It's my longest.
I got to look in my bookcase and see if I
no
my hardcover.
But it's one. But that one is the one where I finally think I got some characters in there that are very real, that feel good. They feel like people, and yet they're also doing things that I want them to do. You know, they're doing what I want them to do without me having to make them do it. You know what I mean? That's the key. And once the characters do that, you know,
the muscle for sure. I mean, you just gotta exercise it. The more you do it, and I kind of felt that same way, because when I look back at the beginning, I had a lot of help. I had people that were working with me on everything from point of view to dialogue, and it's just one of those things. Jessica's a swimmer, and when she needs her motivation or needs to think about something, to be able to go in and just do that Zen thing where she dives in and starts doing laps. She knows the strokes are it's all muscle memory for her. So sort of subconscious is able to be released. And that's where she works out the tough problems in her mind, and where a lot of the solutions to her puzzles come from is in the pool. And for guys like us, I mean, a lot of times what I'll do if I need to let my subconscious figure something out is I'll go back to my coding. I'll go back to my days of writing computer code, and the ones and zeros that's all fact. I mean, that is just, you do this and that happens. And I still love it. I enjoyed the time when I was developing apps for smartphones and stuff, but I knew it wasn't something that was going to. The problem I have, do you have this problem? I have a problem that whenever I figure something out, I lose interest in it.
Yes.
No. Yes. I wanted to fly. That's exactly right. I wanted to be a pilot, so I learned how to fly one kind of aircraft, and then I figured it out. Then I wanted to learn the twins, and I figured that out. Then I wanted to learn rotary, so I learned how to fly helicopters. And I'd be flying jets, but it cost too much. The per hour time to learn was like more than my budget thing. But I don't fly at all anymore. I still could. Yeah. But once you figure it out, once you've done that cross country, and once you've done all that stuff, it's just not interesting anymore. So
actually, that was one of my challenges. Well, I mean, weirdly, this was an arrogant challenge I had with writing this past few years. I felt like I had it figured out, and I realized recently the more I thought I knew, the less I do. And there's always more to learn with writing, and it's a cliche to say that, but it's also a very it's just such a deep skill set that you can always do better, and you can always do more. And sometimes doing more doesn't mean, writing a better book doesn't mean writing a more complex book, or writing a book that's more important, to the world or something. Like, it does more. Right. It's just writing. Sometimes it's just writing that book that you want. I think that's usually what it is for me. And I always want a new book. I don't want the old ones anymore.
One thing that you're a master of, Tim, and I've been able to find my Origin of Storms and opened it up to chapter 1. You write great first chapters.
Oh, that's news to me.
Sentences. It's just so powerful. I mean, 9 cycles ago, trouble found her. 3 teenage girls blocked. Is it Yajin? Is that how you pronounce it? Yajin. Yajin's path home on a cold night side street of the Kaga settlement. 2 of the girls were empty-handed, but one in the middle, Nira, carried a metal pipe. Yajin's heartbeat accelerated. Adrenaline offered the 2 usual options when confronted with threat of violence: fight or flight. What an amazing opening that is.
Oh man, you're making me blush. It's a good thing I turned the camera off.
No, but think about it. I mean, even if you ripped away the fact that you wrote that and looked at it as an outsider, I mean, I wanted to continue that book because of that first paragraph. I wanted to know immediately who this girl was, why she was in trouble, what was the settlement, what's going on in that world. And then you start painting it, and you do it with dialogue. Your dialogue's terrific. So, I mean, for somebody who felt that they couldn't write characters, I mean, whatever you did, you figured it out.
Well, that was the first book. That was the first book I really felt like I nailed it, And so, and I know a lot of people said they didn't think that I nailed it in my old writing groups when I was workshopping it. But I think I pushed it a little beyond. I think I ratcheted it up a notch in between then and now.
Well, and you got the 5 stars. I mean, the thing about workshops and writing groups is that a lot of the people that are in them don't share your interest in the genre, or they don't, they don't like the songs that you like to sing, I guess is another way to put it.
That's a good point. But, it doesn't matter how good your death metal band is if you got a folk musician or folk listener to listen to it.
Right.
Unless of course they're like me and they like both folk and death metal. But you know what I mean. if whoever's listening to you doesn't like death metal, they're not gonna like Opeth or whatever. It doesn't matter how good they are.
I want to know who does your covers, because I think your covers are.
I do myself.
So that Origin of Storms cover with that gal, that
photo
is
manipulation. I did all that. Yeah.
Wow. In what app?
Photoshop.
Really? Oh my gosh.
See, that is, I'm getting better at that stuff too. It just keeps getting better.
Yeah, that's another thing, isn't it? I mean, that's what I found out with the promotion stuff is now I'm getting to be really good at Adobe Premiere and Adobe After Effects. Because, I needed to figure out how to have Jessica hang from a helicopter without spending $100,000 to do it. And you can do that in After Effects. I mean, you can make that happen there.
I'm not familiar with that program, but yeah, hell yes. Yeah, and actually, that's the thing about like writing. I do all this, publishing books. I do everything myself now, pretty much, except for the editing.
See,
I haven't edited.
That's the fun stuff. And that to me is the real fun stuff.
It's really satisfying. And to hear someone I respect, someone like you, say that they enjoyed reading one of my books, this is kind of new to me, honestly. It's great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all have fans out there. And the thing is, I just love the craft. I mean, I would say probably your genre is not the stuff I would typically go looking for at Barnes and Noble or something, but what I found, and this is the gift for me of doing the podcast. I'm sure you feel the same way. I mean, we have a variety of guests from all over the spectrum of literature that come join us, and every one of them has a voice. Everyone has a style. Everyone has a story. So, I'll 1 week I'll be talking with somebody about the Underground Railroad. The next week, I'll be off in some galaxy far, far away talking about monsters. And I read those books because I want to make sure I understand my guest when I talk to them. And there's always something fascinating in there. It's I never did that before, Tim. Before I started writing fiction, I stuck to my genre. I was an old school Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler kind of guy. I love those stories. I liked reading Charlie Chan, Mr. Moto. I liked the Hardy Boys and all that kind of stuff. But I never had reached much beyond that. C.S. Lewis for me, Chronicles of Narnia, and then the Silent Planet, all the his
Out of the Silent Planet, yeah.
And, that was
stuff.
Stretch. That blew my mind. I read.
It blew mine. I was in college when I read that, and I read Paralandra, and I was like, wow, this is insane. I can't believe this was written in what is it, the 50s, the 60s?
Yeah.
So
well, and then Heinlein came to me later on. The classic people that kind of paved the way for all of this. And, that I've been going back to those books now that I understand a little bit about story structure, and about the craft. And it's fascinating to reread them. Mm-hmm. I was talking with somebody today, and we were talking about how you keep the story going and how one thing leads to another, and how you always leave with a cliffhanger. And she had just done a day-long retreat talking about this. And I said, okay, here's your assignment. I want you to go and watch the first Back to the Future movie. And I want you to watch it with the knowledge you have now about story structure and about cliffhangers, because the end of that movie, when Doc comes back and they get in the car and he says, "It's your kids," and he says, "Roads, we don't need any roads." There wasn't a person in that theater that wouldn't have stayed to see the second film right then and there.
Right, that's a killer. That ending is so powerful for that kind of thing. Yeah,
then you look at the beginning. I mean, think about the beginning, Tim, with all those different clocks, and you see the dog food keep loading up. All of that connects to the story. There's not a thing there that doesn't have some connection later on, and that's the magic. Now that we know kind of how this goes together, to go back and watch it. I have the same thing with movies. I'm a big movie nut, so I'm always thinking about shot composition and how they mic their guys and stuff. And I know Woody Allen isn't considered cool anymore, but I loved watching Manhattan because it was anamorphic and black and white, and it was like it had some Fellini to it. I mean, it was amazing stuff, and I look for that. I look for those kind of things too. But did we talk about this before? Whenever I get stuck, I always retreat to screenplays. So if I can't figure out,
I'm not sure if you mentioned this before. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, this is interesting. I've written a couple along the way, and when I get stuck with Jess, if I can't figure out how to make the thing happen verbally, I put it on the screen. I bring up my final draft, and that's how I do the car chases. I do them shot by shot. I imagine where they're going. I just have the dialogue, minimal stuff. And then I look at it when it's done, and invariably the words flow. The challenge
awesome.
that I have is,
now that's good advice though. Change the medium though. Change the medium. That's classic writing advice.
Yeah.
And changing to a film script or a stage or stage play, whatever you're doing, could be like, because I wrote some stage plays back in college for a theater class, but it's one of those things of like, just thinking about it in those different terms can really shake things up. Actually, one of my favorite authors, rest in peace, Roger Zelazny.
Right.
He would do that. He would write like the end of one of his books. The climax is like all basically, it's just stage directions and dialogue. Like literally. I think that was Creatures of Light and Magic or something. I forget exactly what it's called. Creatures of Light and Dark, maybe. It's the one with the Egyptian pantheon. It's not as well known these days.
Well, the guy that really turned me on to screenplays was Bill Goldman. And in 1969, when Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, was winning all the awards, he put the screenplay out as a paperback. And the way he writes screenplays, like when they put too much dynamite in the safe and the whole railroad car blows up, he's just saying, the whole goddamn railroad car blows up to smithereens, and it's all, and you could tell he's having a blast. He's just having a blast describing this story.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. Well, I gotta show the audience your cover for Origins.
I'll put it in the show notes. Remember, this is not record the video, but the cover is pretty good. If I can say so myself.
Yeah, please do put it in the show notes, because now that I know that you did that, I mean, you're a Renaissance man, Tim. Gosh, I want to grow up to be like you.
Well, and actually, you should see. I mean, over on my DeviantArt page, you can see more of my covers. I think it's at. Actually, do not remember the name because it's an old ass DeviantArt page. But I put my covers up there, and I have one of them that I actually built models for the characters, and then shot them, and then painted over them in Photoshop, and that's one of my favorites. But it's a little bit out of date. I only did 2 of the characters on the cover with that way, and then.
Well, you had merch. You had merchandise.
I still have it. I mean, because these are like 28mm models, like Warhammer models. And they're actually physical things. That book hasn't come out or anything, but like I want to do that book so bad just because that cover.
You can 3D print that stuff now. You can just take that thing.
It's tough to print. I mean, I actually used a lot of parts. They're kind of hard to get your hands on, and I don't have a 3D printer. I wish, man. Someday soon.
Oh my gosh!
Maybe when the books start bringing some more money, I'll definitely. That's on the list.
Ham radio did a thing, a presentation on 3D printing at one of our meetings, and he brought one in that was relatively inexpensive. And the tough part, of course, is the programming, the ones and zeros. But he had something loaded up, and he pushed the button while he was giving his talk, and it just started making this thing. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of The Fifth Element.
Oh,
but they were remaking, the gal, and because I'm watching this thing going on, and I'm thinking, okay, where's Bruce Willis? Where's the guy in his cab? That's one of my favorite movies. Fifth Element is just such an awesome, awesome film. And this is that whole prologue piece could be like they had a different cast, completely different time, and that we'll be back in 1,000 years or something. And then, then it becomes, basically an urban story, like an urban drama story where you got Bruce Willis, this cab driver, dealing with a runaway, basically.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And
it's actually
I was thinking about,
go on, sorry.
I was thinking about Kubrick, who said, every scene's been written, every word's been typed, every shot's been conceived and put on film. What we have to do is we have to make the story our own. Yeah. So we may be telling a story that's been heard before. That's where the word trope comes from, is because it's you think about, okay, so that's when you're pitching Hollywood, it's Indiana Jones meets Luke Skywalker or something like that. That's how they pitch stuff out there. But the magic in storytelling is how you inject your own sensibilities into it, and you put a different character in. I mean, a Latina detective.
Yeah. Doesn't take that much, really. You just
it's a case of a bad guy. I mean,
twist or two,
It's old as could be, but that's what I love about this art, is that you and I can, if we wanted to do a collab, we could probably sit around and come up with a really cool plot over the course of an evening and a few beverages. That would be a blast, but it would be a story that's been told before somewhere, but it would be all new because it'd be ours.
Yeah.
And that's what I love most about writing, is that we have a chance to recreate again and again and again.
That's beautiful. And actually, I think it's a good note to end on, because we've gone way over time. Boy, time flies.
This is great. Hey, listen, I love being with you, Tim. Thanks for having me on again. It's great to see you, and I hope you enjoy Captain as much as I enjoyed writing it.
So the book is Chasing the Captain. Terry Shepard, thank you so much. This has been a ton of fun. It's always great to chat with you. I hope to have you back soon. You better be back for the next book. Maybe not. I don't want to be the first interview for the next book. That's fine. I want to talk to you again soon, though, sir. And thanks for listening, everybody. You can find my books on mentalcellularpublications.com, timneaterwriter.com/books. You can find all the covers, all the books. Most of them are. I did most of them pretty much myself. So if you like anything you see there, you can commission me. I do make covers. It's just I don't know how to sell them exactly at this point. I'm pretty rough at that. But I have done a few. I've done a few out there. So, and then the new book is Temple Theater, Book 1, The Forgotten Mask, which is a cover that I only did part of that one, but I did some of it. I didn't do the text. The text is the part that I didn't know how to do at that point, because the cover got done ages ago. So, yeah.
That's terrific.
So thanks for listening, everybody, and stay safe out there. Have a good week. I'll talk to you soon. So, stay reading and stay writing. Bye-bye.